Welcome to day 2 of the Silver Symposium. I know we're still finishing up our breakfast and getting caffeinated. We're going to get started. Yesterday morning we had just one company, and today, as you can see, we have 5. So it's going to take us a bit longer to get through all these Canadian mining stories. This is the Canadian-focused panel, and I was reading an article on Bloomberg last week. It was about how Canada could become the next metals powerhouse, and it was talking about the vast endowment of metals across all the provinces and the fact that it had so much hydropower and how we need all this silver and nickel and cobalt and copper to power this transition to electrification in cars and gadgets and all the things we're going to need these increasing amount of metals for in the coming years. So it's a pleasure to be on this panel with many companies: Canada Silver Cobalt Works, Alianza, Cartier Resources, Dolly Varden Silver, and Renforth Resources. And they're each going to tell you their stories. We'll have about 10 minutes a company to get the elevator pitch, as it were. And then I think to keep it engaging, we should do questions on a per company basis. So first is going to be Matt Halliday from Canada Silver Cobalt Works. And if you have questions after his brief remarks, please raise your hand and we can keep it engaging as we go on down the line and you hear from all these companies.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'd just like to kind of start about where I'm located. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and I'm in the prolific cobalt mining camp. The cobalt mining camp, for some context, was founded in 1903. And it was very much the wild east of a mining camp. They found high-grade silver right at the surface, and basically they started mining that silver immediately, seeing the first productions in 1904. The first 4 years, I believe, they mined silver at 2,600 ounce per ton. This was just massive silver veins reaching up to the surface. And then they had a following 8 years, I believe, at around 800 ounce per ton, they were mining silver. So this is a very rich, narrow vein mining camp, and they had a prolific history there. A lot of technology came out of this camp. It was a hard rock mining camp. Back in those days in Canada, most of it was a lot of soft rock mining, so there was a lot of innovation. This town went from a population of 0 up to 50,000 people in no time. They, in fact, had to invent a provincial police force to kind of stop some of the shenanigans, with the train robberies and whatever else that was happening in the town. The camp was very prolific for the next 80 years. In fact, it was running up until about 1989. And there was a fall of the silver price, and the main operator of the camp had pulled out of the camp at that time. Through that 80-plus year history, they produced about 640 million ounces of silver and over 30 million pounds of cobalt. There was about 108 mines. Now, a lot of these early mines, of course, were on postage stamp claims, but those postage stamp claims were so rich that they could still pull out million or close to million plus ounces off of one claim. But that being said, there has been a lot of companies that, in the later years that were major companies. We had Teck in there, and Teck produced over 100 million ounces of silver at their Silver Fields property. So it is possible to see over 100 million ounce deposits in the cobalt mining camp. Agnico was the main player at the end of the camp, and they basically operated a model where they did a lot of brownfields exploration and reopened mines, and had a hub and spoke type system where they operated multiple mines at the same time. And so that is basically the system that I'd like to emulate in the future. I think that a camp that is so historic and so rich and so big, it's about 150 miles across. It's a big circular embayment, and I think that it has the opportunity to have billions of more ounces left in the ground. Now, a lot has changed over the years. When they were first mining, even up into the end, they were visual miners. They found the silver vein, they followed the silver vein, they did not do a lot of drilling. Of course, back in the earlier part of it, they did barely any drilling. They actually would just sink test shafts or test pits instead of drilling, just because of the technology. So where we are today, we have the Castle East project. It is near our fully owned historic Castle mine. The Castle mine produced about 9.5 million ounces of silver and about 30 million pounds, or 300,000 pounds, of cobalt. And basically, we are continuing to explore that property. We have the land that is east of where the low-hanging fruit was. So to the west of our property, there was about 7 or 8 different mines, and we're just moving slightly deeper into the profile, and we've been having tremendous success. So at Robinson East, we've done extensive drilling. We found a large number of veins, 2 of which are extremely high-grade silver. We have vein number 1, which was our initial discovery. We hit 50,000 grams per ton silver there at vein number 1. And at the big silver, we've hit up to almost 90,000 grams per ton silver over 0.3, 0.6 meters. So we have this high-grade silver system that we're very excited about. And we are intending to be able to put a ramp down in the near future. We're working on the environmental baseline studies. We're working on the permitting process. And we want to go in, put a ramp down, take a bulk sample, recover the price of that ramp, and then continue to explore from underground. We have a lot of advantages now with the new technology that we can rapidly grow this resource from underground, and we have the right package of land to be able to do so. So that's the first step for me, is getting this Robinson East, or the Castle East, up and running, and then I'm going to move to the castle. I'd like to reopen the castle and continue to explore the castle. It was, as I said, a historic mine, but it was one of the last operating mines in the camp. And because of the crash in the silver prices and the way that the operator had left the camp, I believe the castle remains a really opportune area to continue to explore for silver, cobalt, and gold. The last time that we were down in the castle, we had done some drilling, and we have found other intercepts of interest. So for me, going down there, revitalizing some of the developments, taking a bulk sample out of the castle itself, and continuing to explore the castle and moving towards the direction where we have the Castle East is my second priority. And then in the future, I'd like to continue to consolidate the cobalt mining camp and to build a centralized milling component, as well as a leach plant for the cobalt. The silver is actually very interesting in the cobalt mining camp. It is native silver, so when you see these veins, they're basically just brilliant veins of dendritic silver or massive silver or silver rosettes with some cobalt rimming. It's pretty spectacular stuff. So I do want to eventually have a centralized mill and a leach plant that we can process the cobalt out of the cobalt mining camp. I think the cobalt will be very important in the future as we're trying to secure conflict-free cobalt and provide a North American supply of cobalt. And I would like to supply cobalt sulfate specifically to the North American market. And so as the company continues to grow, we want to become a multi-deposit company that is actively milling in the area. To that extent, we already have a milling component to the company. We have a facility in the town of Cobalt. It has a ball mill, a cone crusher, and a bullion furnace. We actually had tested the circuit from the waste material at the Castle mine. And we poured 3 silver bars as proof of concept. So we have a facility that is able to run high-grade silver right now. And it is a facility that has been demonstrated historically to service a lot of the mines in the area throughout the 70s and 80s and 60s and produce millions upon millions of ounces of silver. So I think that, in short, we have this very historic camp that's been overlooked in the last 20 years. It has extremely high-grade silver, and it has a lot of cobalt that could be displacing some of this conflict cobalt from around the world, and it will provide the opportunity for North Americans to be more independent in terms of the electrification into the future. And that's a bit about the Canada Silver Cobalt Works. Thank you.
You have 100% of all those projects? You mentioned the castle's 100% owned. Do you have any partners, or are you earning into any of the projects, or are they all yours?
We have 100% of all the projects in the cobalt mining camp. We do have some option agreements on our battery metals projects in Quebec. We do have a large number of copper, nickel, cobalt projects in Quebec with some option agreements, but everything that I've talked about today is 100% Canada Silver Cobalt.
Got it. You know, the recently passed bill here, the Inflation Reduction Act, requires that the battery metals come from North American trade partners to be eligible for the tax credits. So I'm wondering if there's potential for partnerships or offtakes down the road for potential funding.
I really hope so. I'd like to be able to expand the company as quickly as we can and find offtake agreements and make sure that we are focusing on the North American corridor.
Great. Great. Any questions for Matt?
We have about $1.5 to $2 million right now, and that should be able to cover the projects that we have on the go. Right now, we are doing a lot of technical work at the Castle East. That's the environmental work and as well as other permitting. We have a project coming up shortly, a small drill program at our EV Auto property, and we do have funding available for that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Agnico is up in Kirkland Lake right now. Agnico is actually still the largest landholder in the cobalt mining camp. We do have a lot of opportunity, I think, because I don't believe Agnico wants to return to the silver cobalt space. It's not really in their agenda that I know of. I mean, I can't speak for Agnico, but that does provide a really good opportunity to continue to consolidate the mining camp and to discuss with them.
Just a bit of historical tidbit. It's actually the origins of Agnico. Agnico is AG silver, and I nickel, steel, cobalt. They're born in cobalt, and they now be a $20 billion gold producer. So it just goes to show that it's very fertile. I'm not very historical. I like the way you're saying it.
He's saying that Agnico was actually founded in the cobalt mining camp. It stands for Ag is silver, Ni nickel, Co cobalt. In fact, our CEO was also one of their first metallurgical engineers. In 1982, he worked at the mill in Cobalt for Agnico Eagle. So it's a company that's very close to the cobalt mining camp. And their main operations right now, Macassa Mine and the Dobie project is only about 90 kilometers away.
We're going to move down to Jason Weber from Alianza Minerals, sort of a hybrid prospect generator self-funding model with several projects in many jurisdictions, and I'll let him tell you about those.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It probably the easiest place for me to start is our flagship project, which is in the Yukon Territory in the Keno Hill mining district. It's one of the richest and oldest silver districts in North America. In fact, the Keno district was founded on the back of the Klondike Gold Rush. The Klondikers went up looking for gold in Dawson City. Not everybody was successful, and those who couldn't get a claim on Hunker Creek or one of the big producing creeks headed east into central Yukon and ended up in the Keno area and eventually, in about 1908, found the first silver veins. It's with galena, a lead mineral. Galena Hill was the first discovery in the district, and from about 1908 on, The district has been in almost constant production. I think it was in the early 1900s that Keno first went into production. It was in production until about 2 months ago, when the Alianza Resources, who has the bulk of the Keno district, just announced a shutdown so that they could stockpile ore to feed their mill. But over that period, there's been over 65 silver deposits discovered and mined in the Keno district. And the amazing part is there's probably another 65 left to be found. And one of the old sort of myths about the district was, and this was especially prevalent through the 1980s when the silver price started to drop, is the thought was that as they went deeper on these silver veins, that they'd become more lead zinc and especially zinc rich deposits. And Alexco in recent years has drilled some very deep holes and hit some of their highest grade silver intersections ever. So throws that old myth out the window and kind of rejuvenated the district to the point where just in the last couple of months, Hecla Mining announced a takeover of Alexco. So that should close here early in September and brings the biggest U.S. silver producer into the district. They're our neighbor now. Our project sits right adjacent to the Keno claims, the Keno landholding, and puts us in a real interesting position where we have a claim package that, while its initial silver discoveries on this claim package were made about the same time the original discoveries were made at Keno Hill, there really hasn't been a lot of exploration on the project. There was sporadic exploration and a little bit of production through 1914 to 1928. Recovered just under 30 tons of almost 4,000 grams per ton silver. The biggest problem being that they were about 25 miles from where the ore was processed, and back at that time period, moving very heavy lead silver ore 25 miles by horse and carriage was not really all that feasible. So the project sat until about the 1960s, and there was a flurry of work done over about a 4-year period, identified some new veins, and then it sat again until 2008. So you have an active mining district with silver veins showing at surface, yet no work had been done. We got involved in 2018 and took the approach that while we knew there was vein mineralization on surface that the old-timers had found, we really felt that there was potential for more mineralization that maybe these old-timers weren't able to find back in their day. And one of the big sort of characteristics of the area where we are is we're on a mountainside. The mineralization occurs within very hard quartz-rich rocks that when they weather, they break up into big boulders, like car-sized boulders. And so any mineralization at surface gets weathered away, and then these big boulders just sort of slough in on each other. And it would be almost impossible in places for a prospector at that time to find these veins coming to surface. So we, using more modern techniques, are able to, and understanding the architecture of the veins in the district after 100 years of exploration, we're able to apply new techniques and go and identify areas where we thought there could be vein mineralization. And in our work since 2018, we've identified 2 new veins. One of them from simple soil sampling. It sounds very basic, but we sampled whatever soil we could find from between these big blocks and boulders, came up with silver and lead, and that led to our first drill program, which in fact hit 4 different silver-bearing veins in our first drill hole. We call that the Bighorn anomaly. It sits right on our road, access right into the property. And then we went back sort of the central area where a lot of the old-timers had discovered some of the original mineralization and had stepped back to test one of the surface showings and hit a vein we weren't expecting to hit. And the first intersection was okay. It had some silver in it, but one of the mantras from the exploration team at Keno, who's involved in some of these very deep discoveries, one of the things they said is if you get silver in a vein in this district, you got to follow it up. So we drilled another hole and hit almost 9 meters of 300 grams per ton silver, which is ore cutoff grade at the mine, and a very, very thick vein intersection that we were really excited about that. And we've followed up with 8 more holes that have defined this vein over about 100 meter by 90 meter panel, with grades in the range of 3 meters of 1,315 grams per ton silver. So really excited that we're on to something that is very distinct, very similar to the other Keno systems in the district. In fact, we've had the Keno geologists look at our material and they say it's a dead ringer. It looks exactly like the stuff that they mine. So that's really exciting from the perspective that our strategy was to come into this project looking at it from almost like the old prospectors did, a blank slate, let's see what we can find. And the proof of concept for us was 2 new vein discoveries in an area that's been explored for sporadically, but explored for over 100 years. So our goal here is to continue to build out not only on the veins that the old timers found, but the new systems we've identified. But we're also going back, and we'll start a program next week that will go and continue to work on some of the earlier stage targets that we've identified and bring those up to the drill-ready stage. So that's really exciting for us. It's also really exciting to have Hecla as our new neighbor in the district. I think that puts a real stamp of approval on this district, and I think we'll see over the next 12 to 18 months as they wrap their arms around this new asset of theirs. We can see them put their expertise and capital to work to get this district back in a much higher profile. So that's our flagship project. It really grows out of the fact that our expertise is in early stage exploration. We look at all kinds of opportunities, and one of the things we do is we try to bring in partners on some of our other projects, and what we're really trying to achieve is exposing our shareholders to as many discovery opportunities as we can, and we do that by partnering on some of these other projects, and a great example is one we call Klondike. It's not in the Yukon, it's in Colorado. We named it after the Klondike Valley that the project sits in, so it's not something we made up. I get asked that question all the time. But this is a copper project that the opportunity came across our desk about a year ago. We went out, staked some claims, brought in a partner, and did some groundwork to identify drill targets, and a year later we're drilling. So I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to take an idea, a concept, and within a year we've got a drill rig on site, and we're drilling holes right now that could lead to discovery. With the idea being that every one of these opportunities for discovery gives our shareholders another chance to see an uptick in the share price of our stock. And that just sort of works in the background. We're working at Haldane in the Keno district, that's our focus, but we've got these other projects and targets in the background that can bring value to the company as well. And with our focus on the earlier stages of exploration, we're able to get into these projects much more cheaply. It's risky exploration, but we can mitigate that somewhat by bringing in partners to fund that work. So over the next year, we look to see, including Haldane, we could probably see 4 drill programs on various projects that we have through Colorado and Yukon territory, funded by partners, and then Haldane funded out of our own treasury. So that's our strategy as you outlined at the start. It's a flagship project, kind of a bit of a hybrid project generator with partnerships funding exploration opportunities in the background.
You alluded to it a little bit there. I wonder if you could elaborate just a tiny bit more on the potential collaboration that exists with Hecla and the geologists from Alexco. Yeah,
I think one thing Hecla has made clear when they're talking about this new acquisition is that they've been really impressed with the people at Alexco, and those I would expect that they would would keep, especially their exploration team on. They've done a phenomenal job. And we have a very good relationship with that exploration team. At the end of every season, we bring them over, they look at our core, give us advice on what they see, what certain textures might mean. If we have a problem, a couple years ago we had a problem with a piece of equipment, phoned up those guys and they lent us theirs for the afternoon, and we were able to get our project back underway. So a very strong relationship that I think will grow, and I think it's also really interesting to see just how much the Hecla people that we've talked to really appreciate and value the work that Alexco exploration team has done. So I think they've done a bang-up job, and we expect to see them continue that.
Great. Any questions for Jason? I encourage you to stick around to the end, where everyone here is going to give away an ounce of silver drawn from a ticket here in the cup. So we've got 3 more presentations to get through. If there's no questions for Jason, we're going to go from the Yukon over to Quebec with Renforth Resources and Nicole Brewster with her Ceramo project.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. I'm going to speak to you about our flagship project, Ceramo, which is in a fantastic jurisdiction of Quebec. Sticking to the hunting hidden treasures theme, I'm not going to go into the history too much because my companion up here can speak far better to that. But suffice to say, Ceramo's a neat property because we're hunting what's been sitting in plain sight and ignored. We're in what is called the Pontiac. We're south of the Cadillac Break. And again, Philippe will speak better to this, but the Cadillac Break is an absolutely spectacular geological structure that runs between Ontario and Quebec. And as such, the attention was always on the Cadillac Break, because why go looking for something when that's right in front of you? So the property we have, which is 330 square kilometers, so it's a district in and of itself, is one I put together because there's 6 areas of historic work on the property, very small, limited historic work, but they were looking for gold because I'm in what became a gold camp with Agnico, who's now a gold company, as my biggest neighbor. So when they found what was then called base metals, nobody cared, and they went their merry way looking for gold elsewhere. But the Quebec government does a fantastic job of keeping all of their historic information. So you can go hunting for treasures on the Sigome website, which is what I was doing, and I was staking everything nearby off of a property I owned to form this 330 square kilometer property. 3 areas of historic work were the first we visited, namely Victoria, which we drive down the highway. We drive south from the town of Cadillac, right down the highway to the Victoria mineralization showing, which is actually another neat part of exploration in that frequently when roads are put across empty ground, the geologists are usually not too far behind, checking to see what the road cut uncovered, what was cleared. And that happened in the 1940s because south of Ceramo, the same road from Cadillac down goes to Rapid 7, which is a hydroelectric dam. And the road goes right through the property with the mineralization showing on the road, and the hydroelectric cable goes right across the property as well, which speaks to a future source of green electricity because 98% of the electricity produced in the province of Quebec is hydroelectric. It's actually the cheapest electricity in my country. But the geologists followed the road crew, and they found the Victoria showing, and about 3 kilometers to the north, they found the Lalonde showing. So we visited both of those, and the Victoria showing happens to be sitting on in Sigome, I'm looking at the government geophysics, and it's sitting on a 20-kilometer long magnetic high feature, and I'm like, it can't be this easy. Surely to God, I'm not a genius. It can't be this easy to find this. But it was. Nobody's ever looked. The other side of the 20-kilometer trend was the colony showing. So I started staking all these claims in the end of 2020 and through 2021 and got away with it for a while and nobody noticed what I was doing. But sure enough, I now have a lot of neighbors and they've actually called it a district. It's now the Pontiac Cadillac Lithium District. because there's a little bit of lithium. Like there's lithium on our own property, but it's, to be honest, it's not our focus. But now it's a whole exploration district, mainly because it's a district that was entirely ignored to date. So there was empty ground, so people could stake the ground. So back to the story, we stake it. I'm like, there's no bloody way. It's a 20-kilometer magnetic feature. There's no way. And we know it's associated with base metal sulfides. So it's nickel, cobalt, PGEs in an ultramafic. But there's also a VMS occurring there, which is giving us copper, zinc, silver right now, and not very much gold. So it's a unique setting. But I'm looking at this mag high going, I'm not a genius. Like, this can't be this easy. So this past summer, my geologists, my field team, followed as much of that 20 kilometers as they could access in conjunction with a specific kind of survey we flew, which shows us sulfides in the first 100 meters of rock. And sure enough, there's sulfides all the way along that 20 kilometers. So the lesson is, sometimes it is that easy. Lalonde to the north, it's a longer trend. The Victoria trend bisects the middle of the property pretty much straight across, east to west, 20 kilometers. Lalonde starts in the corner and goes up to the northwest. So in fact, the geophysical signature is longer. We have not visited the entirety of it. It encompasses a couple showings. Lalonde is right now, we've stretched it to 9 kilometers on surface. It's never been drilled, and it's given us the best visual mineralization. So this is incredibly exciting because whilst there were bits of historic work, Victoria had like a handful of holes drilled in bizarre directions that make no real sense, and it had 2 historic pits. Colony, a couple drill holes, and some surface samples. That's nothing in the world of work. So we have this huge property, virgin ground, never been rigorously attacked by a team of geologists, and it's mineralized. But it's mineralized with things that when the work was done, the bulk of the work was done in the 1980s by a company that was then called LAC Minerals. And LAC Minerals has ceased to exist. It's been gobbled up. Although my neighbor at Ceramo and the neighbor at the gold deposit we hold is Canadian Malartic. It's Canada's largest open pit gold mine. And I got the weirdest email the other day. Canadian Malartic, in their ton of core they have on site from their own operations, their owners' operations, because they're owned by, right now, Agnico and Yamana, soon to be Agnico and Goldfields. They found one of the drill holes from the 1980s. Only one. And they asked me if I wanted it. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, give me the core. Geologists can see that rock. But for all we're in this fertile country, and LAC did this little bit of work, nobody looked at it. So what we have now is a 20-kilometer structure and a 9-kilometer structure, mineralized systems. I can't speak to the entirety of the grade because we have only drilled 5,600 meters. Right now it looks like a large scale, which means big, low grade, which means in terms of nickel, around 0.25% nickel sulfide polymetallic. And the polymetallic is probably the most important word there because it brings other metals to the table. Cobalt, PGEs, zinc, copper, silver, probably a bit of gold at some point. All of those other metals will contribute economically. So from the business case perspective, because that's how I look at things, this property has the legs it needs. It's logistically located in an established, a rich historical mining district where people understand and make their living from mining. It's on empty ground, so I'm not moving anybody's cottage. I'm not interfering with their way of life. We have a good relationship with the First Nation to the north, the Picogan community, who supply us with services when we're working. We have road access through government-maintained service roads to 2 hydroelectric dams, so these roads are spectacular. The roads both lead to the Trans-Canada Highway, the northern route, so that highway goes across our country. We have hydroelectric power coming from the 2 dams crossing the property in 2 different areas, so we'll have the cheapest power available to us that's truly green. An hour away from the property, in the town of Rouyn-Noranda, we have Canada's only copper-nickel smelter in the Horn Smelter, owned by Glencore. So that's the ultimate destination for any rock that'll come off this property. And we're not building new smelters in my country, and I really don't think you guys are either. So we can't have a better location. Our timing, these are battery metals now. We used to call them base metals. Now we shine things up and we call them battery metals because you can't get away from nickel in building batteries. 93% of the nickel in the world goes to China. My country is cozying up to everybody to supply battery metals, but most countries are trying to diversify away from China. So everybody wants assets, and this is a new asset. We're still hunting. We're still trying to determine what our real grade is. How much metal do we really have? We're only going to focus on 6 kilometers of the 20-kilometer structure and about 4 kilometers of Lalonde, of the 9. Now, why? Because we're going to go down the road and we're going to work west. We're not going to work east yet. So how are we going to do it? We have about $500,000 in the treasury. It really doesn't matter because as soon as I get money in, the money goes in the ground and I drive my CFO absolutely insane. Because I'll stretch a nickel really far and I'll work with very little money in the bank because we own all our properties outright. We own a gold project in Ontario outright. We own a gold deposit right beside Canada's largest open pit gold mine outright. And we own Ceramo outright. Ceramo, with the exception of a tiny little corner, is entirely unencumbered. There's no NSRs. There's no forward sale agreements. Now, how are we going to fund it? We have investments in the company that are floating around $1.25 million, but I won't sell them right now because they're in a junior companies, and no junior company wants a major shareholder coming into the market right now. I believe in karma, so screwing somebody else over is only going to come and bite me in the ass eventually. We also have properties. The gold project, and more importantly, the gold deposit will be sold, and that money will go into the ground. I do raise money occasionally. I've probably to date in my time raised $10 million independently without the help of any helpful brokers. And I'll go back to my shareholders for more money. But we have a pathway to the capital we need to at least outline a reasonable first pass resource. And I'm sorry, I mean, looking at the macro and the headlines we see every day, I don't even think it's going to be another mining company that comes calling. And I have a couple watching. I think it's going to be an automotive company or a battery manufacturer that comes calling, wanting to vertically integrate and ensure their access to their supplies. So we continue to work. We're kind of following our noses. At my booth, we flew a really cool study, and it shows the MEG survey, and it shows the EM anomalies. And I was asked yesterday, do I have drill targets? I'm like, well, yeah. Well, the map is a drill target. The whole thing's a drill target. So we're hunting. We still have things we don't know. We know we have 2 bodies intertwined together, but we don't know what they look like. We got excited when we got the 20 kilometers. We're like, well, we're mining people. We don't believe anything until we can put a drill on it and see the rock. So Victoria, we did we took the old trenches, the historic ones, and I said, what's the most we can strip? Let's strip over those trenches and as far as we can between some drill holes. When we did that, we realized we had more copper in the system than we saw when we were drilling. But we did that, and the geologists wandered off a little bit and started sampling. And they looked at that stripping, which was in between that drilling we did last year. My geologist helpfully wanders off in the trees and comes back. He says, I found some more outcrop, and I don't think it lines up. We're like, what the hell does that even mean? Thanks very much. Like, were you reading your compass right? Are you sure? He goes back out, finds some more, and we flew the detailed survey. We realized we have a northern horizon of band of mineralization north of the mineralization we drilled on Victoria because the mineralization splits. We don't know why. We don't know what it means yet. We'll drill it later this year. But it's a great business because as soon as you think you know something, Mother Nature proves you don't know anything. We thought we knew all the mineralization in that area, and she popped her head up and said, no, do your homework. So it's fun. I love it. I love sharing the news with people. We press release, we over press release, I've been told. And then I send emails explaining it. But it is a treasure hunt. There's a prize. We know we're kind of holding the prize, but it's like we haven't unwrapped the present yet. We've only pulled the corner off the wrapping paper. And we have to keep working and figure out what we've got. But I'm pretty sure this will work. These commodities are needed. We're in the midst of what is a new industrial revolution, and it's the storage of energy. And you can't get away from nickel to do that. So that's what we're going to focus on.
I'm going to jump in with a question about funding. You said you got about $500,000 left in the treasury, and you don't want to sell stock. I recall watching a presentation you gave before, and you briefly mentioned it there, the potential sale of other land holdings you have. Can you talk about just how you plan on funding going forward?
Yeah. So, I mean, later this year, I'll do a very small private placement with existing shareholders who've reached out to me. Other than that, the Ontario Gold Project is exciting, small scale, and I think it's in good standing now for 13 years. We will option that to somebody. That'll bring a little bit of money, a little bit of shares, and work in the ground into the company, or sell it outright. And there's one party that is assuring me they want to do that deal once they're listed, so we'll see. More importantly, the Parbec Gold Deposit has had several suitors. Of course, the gold market's pretty crap right now, but we calculated a resource in May 2020 on 27,000 meters of drilling. Subsequent to that resource, I drilled an additional 15,000 meters and qualified 13,000 historic meters that are outside of that resource. So me being naive, I thought that people would be as excited about new information as I was. They could buy the asset based on what the public's aware of in May 2020 and update the model, announce it, do it internally. No, people want their butts covered. They want to limit their liability, so they want me to do that work so that they know what they're getting. Nobody's sticking their neck out. So internally, we're doing a 43-101 update. It will not be public because an internal update's $25,000. A public one is $125,000. But internally, it allows us to sell the property because under a CA, I can market with that document. So Parbec will be sold probably in the next 6 to 12 months. And that'll provide a significant amount of capital, and once done, should remove the need to raise money in Renforth.
Great. Any questions for Nicole? We keep on going to Dolly Varden now with Shawn Khunkhun, who's put together the eponymous Dolly Varden project and homestake into a project they're calling Kitsalt Valley, and I'll let him tell you all about that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And I just want to thank our host, Rob. You've put on a great conference. Thanks, StockPulse. Thank you all for getting up early and hearing some exciting opportunities. When I got here, the first thing I thought of was there's 300 people here. And I thought if this was a crypto conference, there might be 3,000 people. And if this was a crypto conference a year ago, there might be 30,000 people. So I think this is the right time to be getting knowledge on silver companies. I had the great fortune of finding this business 18 years ago, and I helped build the gold company in the 2000s during the move from gold from 300 to 1900. I learned a lot through that experience. I was 23 years old. I helped raise $500 million to take that mine into production. We took a company from inception to a $1.4 billion market cap. We had a stock go from 7 cents to $5 a share. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a mining engineer. I'm here because I want to make my shareholders money. During that gold cycle, what I saw was as we got into the later stages of the cycle, silver went crazy in the last 6 months. And as I started studying history and I looked at 1980 and I started going through some historical cycles, there seemed to be a pattern. And so my thinking was, this next time I think we're going into a gold market, I need to get silver exposure. So I started learning about the silver industry, and I started finding out that 70% of silver comes as a byproduct. I learned that most of the silver comes out of places like Mexico, Argentina, Peru, Chile. I started seeing a left-moving movement sweeping South America. And so when I decided to get silver exposure, I thought I need to focus on grade, I need to focus on jurisdiction. And I came across an area in BC called the Golden Triangle. And the Golden Triangle, like Jason talked about the Klondike Gold Rush, and the prospectors back in 1890s on their way up, they went through Stewart, BC, which is right on the Alaska border. And this area it's one of the most tremendous gold, silver, copper endowments on the planet. The richest 20 kilometers on our planet is up in the Golden Triangle. There's been 800 million ounces of silver discovered to date. And so when I came across Dolly Varden, I knew it was the right asset, the right location, and I knew there was a tremendous regional consolidation. So I took over as CEO back on February 16th, 2020. I've been running the company for 2.5 years. In that 2.5-year period, what we've accomplished at Dolly Varden, we've taken a $20 million company. It's valued at $135 million today. We've done that at a time where the silver price is flat, the gold price is flat, our peers are down, our share price is up, we have $20 million in the bank, and this is all on the basis that our mineral inventory has gone from 40 million ounces of silver to 140 million ounces of silver, okay? And so my strategy is, I see Dolly as a bank, okay? I see it as a bank of cash, I see it as a bank of silver, and my goal as CEO is to increase that bank balance. We've got supportive shareholders. Hecla Mining is a 10% shareholder, and without Hecla's financial support and their technical expertise, we couldn't be doing what we're doing today. So I'm grateful to Phil Baker and Kurt Allen, their CEO and VPX. I'm also grateful to Eric Sprott. When I took over the company, Eric came in and took a 20% stake. We're 40% owned by institutions. So the key at Dolly, the reason we have been successful and the share price has performed well is we've got 7 shareholders that control 85% of this company. And there's alignment between those shareholders. Their shareholders are here because they believe silver is undervalued. And they think silver's going higher, and they think that we have the technical team to make discoveries and continue to grow this business. So if you guys would like to learn more about the company, please come by our booth. Diana's here in the back, and I'm here. We'd love to talk to you. A little bit about what we're doing today. So my strategy with the treasury is to, like, the first phase of growth was we made a big acquisition. It transformed the company. A lot of you might have heard of Dolly Varden in the past and may have some preconceived ideas of what Dolly Varden is, but what it has become is it's become a company that now controls a district. We've got a 15-kilometer trend, and what's significant about that is we have 3 deposits in the north, 4 in the south, and about 4 miles in between that's never been explored. So that's where the growth is going to come from. It's also going to come from existing deposits. One of the greatest opportunities on the property is it's not been drilled below 350 meters. The first mine that I went and worked at we were down a mile, okay? We were producing from 5,600 feet below the surface. So the fact that we haven't drilled below 1,000 feet, I celebrate that opportunity. So look, we've got 140 million ounces of silver. We're trading at about 70 cents a silver ounce in the ground. In a bull market, on average, a company will trade at about 5 times that valuation. Now, a company like ours that has exceptionally high grades and that's in a safe jurisdiction will trade at a premium. So I think if you're looking for exposure to silver, how Dolly Varden has traditionally traded is if the silver price goes up 1%, we go up 3%. So we give you leverage to rising prices. I've never done a down round financing as CEO. The first money I raised for Dolly, when I took over, this was a 24-cent stock. The first financing we did was at 30 cents, then 45, then 71, then $1, then $1.02. I hope to keep that tradition going. We're well capitalized. With 4 rigs turning on the property, we're going to have a lot of drill results. We just put out some drill results 2 weeks ago. Outside of the resource area, we hit 50 meters, that's 150 feet, of 414 grams silver, so 13 ounces a ton. So this was outside of the resource area. So the team, and I'll tell you, the one thing I'll say about the company, I think we've got the best exploration team in the business. And that's not just from a boots on the ground basis, that's from a board level. I've got Rob McLeod on the board. We've got Michael Henriksen on the board. These guys have made a career of making discoveries, selling companies from the advisory level. We've got Hecla's VPX, Kurt Allen. We've got Jody Gibson, who just won Prospector of the Year in the Yukon for all the discoveries he's made up there. So I am surrounded by some brilliant people. I'm supported by the best shareholders. And, look, we're in the right area. And the one thing I really haven't talked about was the Golden Triangle. So what attracted me to the Triangle was the BC government has spent a lot of money bringing in a lot of infrastructure, which has led to $5 billion of takeovers in the last 3 years alone. And most of that is being spurred on by the third largest gold producer in the world, Newcrest. They spent about $4 billion acquiring the 2 operating mines in the district. But there's many other companies like Hecla, like Yamana, like Osisko Royalties that are really focused. I think, as we move forward in this world, I think where you are, your license to operate, and we're in the traditional territories of the Nisga'a. The Nisga'a have an 85% unemployment rate. So the Nisga'a, I remember when COVID happened, when the pandemic first began and everything was shut down, the Nisga'a were calling me and saying, Shawn, when are you going to get to work? Because a third of our workforce comes from their communities. So anyways, I think we've got, I've been doing this for 18 years. There's been twice in my career where I felt like I've got something that's going to have the momentum, that's going to be successful, where I see an exit for my shareholders. This is one of those 2 times in my 18-year career. So I encourage you, put us on your watch list. We've got a lot of news coming out. It's a well-run company. There's a plan A, B, C, D for success, and we work tirelessly on making this company successful, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So I appreciate your time. I look forward to speaking to you at the booth.
I wonder how much drilling you're doing now, Shawn, and when we can expect more results.
So I sit on some other boards in the industry, Nick, and the theme on those other boards is contraction. Let's go from 6 rigs down to 2. Let's drill less. Let's spend less. And at Dolly, we're actually just finalizing plans to increase our spend. And so we're going to go, we had an original 30,000 meters planned for the season. We're going to go to 35. We had 3 rigs on the property. The 4th just arrived. So we're 25,000 meters into a 35,000 meter program. It's fully funded. And in terms of results, I would suspect that every month from, we just put out news 2 weeks ago, September, October, right through to February, we'll be putting out more drill results.
Great. Any questions for Shawn? We'll go back to Quebec then with Philippe Cloutier from Cartier Resources.
Thank you very much. I've been in this business for just under 40 years, and when I showed up in the Quebec portion of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, 25 years old, I thought, well, there's nothing left to find here. This has been around. They've discovered everything. Boy, was I wrong, because the most recent theme for mining companies and exploration companies has been to go back to historic finds and discoveries that for some reason in the 60s, 30s, 70s were shelved. They were shelved because of dire economic headwinds. Corporate strategies were changing, so on and so forth. Nicole mentioned lac minerals. Well, the Abitibi has been home to Placer Dome, Teck, Noranda, Falconbridge, Minova, you name it. And in the recent times, it has seen the birth of some really big mining powerhouses. It's a territory where there has been over 100 million ounces of gold produced, 400 million ounces of silver produced, 35 billion pounds of zinc, and 15 billion pounds of copper in about 100 different mines over a 100-year time span. So trust me, there is mining infrastructure, there's qualified workforce. As Nicole mentioned, there are 2 major hydroelectric power lines that rip down from the James Bay area right down to southern Quebec. We obviously sell a lot of hydroelectricity to Ontario and New York State, Massachusetts, and so on, so forth. So there is an incredible infrastructure there. So it is a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. And that's why Cartier basically set up shop there. I used to work for major mining companies, and at one point I got kind of tired of their 5-year plans that would change every 3 months. So in 2006, I downloaded a bunch of PDF documents and founded Cartier with a group of people that some of them are still with us. So we've been listed 15 years. We're listed on the Toronto Stock Ventures Exchange. And we're proud to say that by now we have 2 major shareholders. Agnico Eagle owns 17.7% of our shares. I'll tell you how that came about. And O3 Mining, part of the Osisko Group, owns 16.6% of our shares outstanding. The Quebec sovereign funds, the unions, et cetera, plus board and management, about 10%. So we have a bit of price protection and a protective moat in there from a share price perspective. Our claim to fame is that in 2012, when the markets turned south, we had $3 million in the bank, and we decided that we needed to come up with a growth strategy that would ensure our survival. And basically, as a gold explorer, we went from prospect generating and grassroots exploration to focusing on projects that had meat on the bone, that had deposits. Our signature strategy was to focus on historical finds and discoveries that had resource estimates that had been, for some reason, shelved and forgotten and were written up before the Bre-X scandal. So these things were quite valid, but they weren't 43-101, and they were under the radar by everybody. That was the first element of our strategy. The second element of our strategy was it was difficult economic times. So rather than mine the geological database in Quebec, which, as Nicole pointed out, is very easy because everything is filed in geographic information systems, GIS systems, on the government platform, we actually started mining our competitor Junior Explorer financial statements. And so it's a pretty shitty statement here, but when somebody's drowning, you're morally obliged to give them a life jacket, but you don't have to buy them a $400,000 yacht. So we purchased 4 deposits, gold deposits in the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. We got really, really lucky. We purchased the past-producing Chimo gold mine from a bankruptcy sale. Soon after, Agnico Eagle approached us, and we crafted a strategic investment deal by their sheer fact of their sponsoring our business model. That attracted $17 million in 2017. We never looked back. We drilled 60,000 meters within 500-meter radius of the Chimo mine project shaft and underground infrastructure. We produced 4 resource assessments. The most recent one was published yesterday morning. It has 700,000 ounces of indicated and 1.63 million ounces of inferred. And what is more significant is that 6 months prior to that, we had consolidated the ground with O3 Mining. They had a 40-kilometer stretch of the Cadillac Fault that was basically surrounded our Chimo mine project. So by eliminating the boundaries, we no longer have any obstacle to growing this resource east and west and at depth. We have 2 drills operating on the ground right now. It's a 25,000-meter diamond drill program that we launched 3 weeks ago. As I said, we recently published a mineral resource estimate. Prior to the consolidation, obviously, we had launched a PEA. Engineers advised us to wait until we had consolidated and merged the resources on the ground just east of us to our Chimo mine project. And we've recently taken the handbrake off that PEA, so we believe that will be filed shortly before Christmas. And that's it. We have $6.5 million in the bank. So the takeaway from this presentation is, I think our business as explorationists is we have to continuously strive to remain relevant with respect to the senior mining companies. We have to consistently try to add value to our projects, because essentially they're counting on us to find their future pipeline of ounces and mines to mine. And they like to do that in jurisdictions that, where you can control and limit risk. So I think the Abitibi, or the Quebec portion of the Abitibi, speaks to that. To that effect, I'll open the floor for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
I wonder what sort of infrastructure came with that past producing mine, if any?
Shaft and underground drifts. There's a 25 kilovolt power line that comes within 300 meters of the shaft collar. In 2006, the company that owned it had sold it to a junior, and they dismantled the shaft, but they had kept it on care and maintenance, so there's a huge concrete plate over it. One of the first engineering studies that we did before embarking on any diamond drilling was shaft haulage capacity and rehabilitation of that shaft, and we had positive results on that, so we forged ahead. Obviously, all the while, we're being chaperoned and coached by the technical team at Agnico.
Great. You've heard from everyone. Is there any questions for Philippe or anyone else on the panel before we give away a couple ounces of silver?